Story 1. Mom kicked out my brother for my stepdad comfort, and she regrets because he's no contact with her. I'm the middle of 3 siblings, my older sister, Grace, and my younger brother, Jack. Our dad passed away when Jack was just a toddler, and our mom remarried quickly. In hindsight, I think she may have started seeing my stepdad before dad even passed away. Jack and I always had a feeling about that, but Grace was too young to notice. Stepdad isn't an awful person, but he's not exactly warm or caring either. He's never really liked kids, especially Jack, and made it pretty obvious. Jack and I think it's because Jack looks so much like dad, and stepdad never liked being reminded of mom's life before him. Things got worse when I moved out, and Jack started getting into trouble, a little nothing major. Just typical teenage rebellion. He'd get into arguments with teachers, or get into some minor trouble with his friends. The worst was when he got caught drinking in the park with some of his buddies, but he wasn't charged. Despite that, mom and stepdad decided that Jack couldn't stay under their roof anymore. They kicked him out right after his 18th birthday. He stayed with me for a while, then went to Grace, who helped him get his own apartment. Jack made it clear he didn't want a relationship with stepdad, and despite trying a few times to reach out to mom, she either ignored him or shut him down. So, after years of rejection, Jack gave up on trying to make amends. It's been 5 years since they spoke. Fast forward to now, stepdad passed away in November, and while I get why mom is upset, I don't understand why she's using his death as an opportunity to try and fix things with Jack. She reached out to him, and Jack, as expected, told her that he gave her plenty of chances to fix things years ago, and she didn't take them. Now, he's done trying. Mom was heartbroken and asked me if I could talk to Jack and convince him to at least try again. I tried to be honest with her and told her that Jack was right. He tried to reach out, but she ignored him. It wasn't my place to fix things, and she needed to take responsibility for her own actions. She started crying, and Grace got upset too. She asked me about it, and when I explained, she said that I was being harsh on mom but also agreed that Jack was being stubborn. Now, I feel bad for making mom cry, but I also feel like I was being honest. I understand that maybe my stepdad influenced her decision to kick Jack out, but I think she needs to own up to her mistakes. Aida for telling mom the truth. Mom and Grace think I'm being in a hole for being too harsh, and they think Jack is being stubborn. Comment replies, not the a hole, honestly. You were just being real with your mom. She made her bed with the way she treated Jack, and now she has to lie in it. But what happens if she remarries again? Is she just looking for someone to take care of her? Or is she genuinely trying to repair her relationship with Jack? Either way, it's on her to rebuild trust. Stay out of it and don't try to fix things for her. Your sister should back off too. Sure, it's upsetting, but it's her mess to deal with, not yours. Not the a-hole. Imagine how betrayed Jack must feel. Chose her new husband over him and kicked him out when he needed her most. So now she can't expect him to just forgive her. Your mom needs to own up to her actions and stop expecting you to fix it. Not the a-hole, honestly. What your mom did was a huge betrayal. She kicked Jack out with nowhere to go, chose her new husband over him. She gave up on him for 5 years. Jack is justified in not wanting a relationship with her, but that doesn't make you the bad guy. Story 2. I stopped spending time with my nephews because my sister-in-law feels uncomfortable with my appearance. I'm 29, and 2 years ago, I lost my twin brother, James, in a tragic accident. He suffered a severe head injury, and despite everything, he didn't make it. James left behind 2 sons, my nephews, Luke, who was 9 at the time, and Sam, who was only 4. My mom was an incredible help during that first year after James passed, but I wasn't able to be around as much because I was working overseas. When I came back, I tried to step in more and be there for my nephews. I'd help out with picking them up from school, watching them for a few hours, and taking them on fun trips basically. I was doing the best I could to be the fun uncle and fill a void for them. Recently though, there's been some tension with my sister-in-law, Natalie. There have been a few occasions where she's accidentally called me James instead of my name. It made her emotional, and now it feels like every time we're alone, she's distant and avoids talking to me. Since quarantine, Natalie has been leaving the boys at my mom's house during the day while she works. I'd visit frequently to spend time with them, but last time, when I was playing video games with Luke. She came in, asked to speak to me privately, and told me that my presence was making things harder for her. She said that all she saw when she looked at me was James, and it was confusing and uncomfortable for her. She asked if I could stop coming by my mom's house to spend time with the boys, or at least not be around when she was there. Honestly, this hurt. I understand she's grieving, but I didn't think it was fair for her to ask me to stop being involved with the kids. I told her I would respect her wishes at her house, but I couldn't just avoid my mom's house entirely because of her discomfort. She was upset, and they left shortly after. I told my mom about it, and while she understood my position, she reminded me that Natalie was still grieving and that seeing me probably stirred up a lot of painful memories for her. I get that, but I still don't think it's fair to ask me to distance myself from my nephews just because I look like James. Over the weekend, Luke texted me several times, asking why I hadn't come over for our usual Saturday basketball game. I didn't want to let him down, but when I went over to my mom's, Natalie was cold with me, and when Luke asked if I could come over again soon, she told him no. Luke was really upset, and it hurt me to see him disappointed. My mom has suggested that maybe I should just keep my distance for now, but it doesn't feel right to me. I want to be there for Luke and Sam, and it feels unfair to me and to them. I miss spending time with the boys, and I understand grief is complicated, but I don't think I should be punished for looking like my brother. So, am I the a-hole for continuing to spend time with my nephews, even though it makes my sister-in-law uncomfortable? Top comments. Not the a-hole. Honestly, I think you're in a really tough position. Your sister-in-law's grief is valid, but asking you to stop being involved in your nephew's lives because of how you look doesn't seem fair. James may have been her husband, but you're their uncle, and it's not right to punish you for looking like him. I do agree with your mom, though, that maybe toning it down a little for now would help ease the tension. But you're not the a-hole here. Not the a-hole. You're not in the wrong for wanting to be there for your nephews. It sounds like you're doing your best to fill a role in their lives that's important to them. Your sister-in-law's grief is understandable, but you can't just pretend to not be part of their lives because of how you look. I would advise toning it down a little to avoid further conflict, but at the same time, you shouldn't have to feel guilty for being there for your family. Not the a-hole. I get that grief makes people act in strange ways, but asking you to distance yourself from your nephews isn't fair to you or to them. They need their uncle, and you want to be there for them. Maybe consider taking a step back for a short while, but don't cut ties with them completely. Just because it makes Natalie uncomfortable. She's still processing her loss, but that doesn't mean you should sacrifice your relationship with your nephews. Not the a-hole. I understand where your sister-in-law is coming from, but it doesn't seem like you're doing anything wrong. You're not trying to replace James. You're just being a good uncle. Her pain is real, but so is your relationship with your nephews. You should continue to be there for them, but perhaps give it some time to let things settle before things get more tense. Ultimately, you shouldn't be punished for a resemblance to your late brother. Story 3. My stepsister rejected our relationship for several years. Now she has come back and is requesting my support. I'm 26 years old and have a brother named Alex, who is 28. I also have a stepsister, Julia, who is 27. Alex and I have always been close, but there's been tension with Julia for as long as I can remember. We've had issues since childhood. When our dad passed away, Alex and I were grieving, while Julia was dealing with the fallout of her parents' divorce. Julia often teased us about how she didn't have to live with a step-parent full-time like we did, and how we'd eventually have to call her dad our dad. That made things harder for all of us, and we never really bonded after that. My mom and stepdad did their best to help us get along, but it never really worked. When Julia moved out of state a few years ago, we lost touch completely. I know that broke my mom and stepdad's hearts, but for Alex and me, it was a relief. Fast forward to now, I have a son, and Alex has 2 daughters. Over the past few years, especially during the early pandemic, Alex and I began swapping babysitting duties to help each other out. It worked because we trusted each other, and it allowed us to manage work and family life. However, this past July, Julia moved back to the area after facing some tough times as a single mom. She asked Alex and me if she could join our babysitting arrangement, saying it would be good for the cousins to know each other. Alex didn't hold back, He told her that this was a sibling arrangement, and since she wasn't his sibling, he wasn't interested. Julia called him a jerk and turned to me, but I explained that I didn't feel comfortable with the idea either. We hadn't been family in years, and I wasn't ready to pretend otherwise. She lashed out, saying this was why she didn't like us growing up, and then went to complain to my mom and stepdad. My stepdad confronted us, asking why we were excluding Julia and her child. I explained that Julia used to mock Alex and me after our dad died, making jokes about our grief. She never made an effort to be close to us, and now that she's in a tough spot, she expects us to forget all of that and help her. Alex was blunt, saying, "We're not siblings and never were," which upset my stepdad even more. I feel conflicted. Julia doesn't have much support, and I know her situation is difficult. But at the same time, I can't just ignore the years of hurt and the lack of effort she's made to rebuild a relationship. It feels like too little too late. So, am I the a-hole for not including her in our babysitting swap? Top comments. Not the a-hole. Julia made her bed, and now she has to lie in it. It's not fair for her to expect you to ignore everything that happened just because she needs help now. She hasn't even apologized for her past behavior. You're under no obligation to include her, especially when she hasn't made an effort to rebuild a relationship. Not the a-hole. Alex handled this perfectly. He was clear and straightforward. This is a sibling exchange, and she's not his sibling. End of story. Julia doesn't get to demand inclusion just because she's struggling now. It's not your fault she didn't take the time to rebuild those relationships earlier. Not the a-hole. While it's sad that Julia is in a tough spot, it doesn't erase the hurt she caused. She mocked your grief and didn't treat you like family when it mattered. Now she wants to skip over all the hard work of rebuilding trust and jump straight into being part of your support system. That's not how it works. Not the a-hole. It's not fair to you or Alex to put aside your boundaries just because Julia needs something now. She's made no effort to apologize or acknowledge the past, and it's understandable that you don't want to include her in your lives. You're doing what's best for your family. Not the a-hole. Julia's actions as a child clearly had a lasting impact. And while people can grow, it's up to her to show she's changed and rebuild those relationships. Instead, she's demanding you include her without doing any of the work. You're not wrong for standing your ground.